Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 325. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss Tall Tale as it celebrates its 30th anniversary. I don't know if a lot of people remember this film. It was one that admittedly I don't remember ever seeing advertised on television as something you could see in the movie theater.
Same.
It was a box office bomb. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why I think that is. I didn't know that this film existed until I saw it in the video store. And it sort of caught my attention because I kind of wondered, like, what is this? You obviously see Patrick Swayze's in it, so he's a massive star at the time. So it, like, kind of was confusing as to why this wasn't a thing when it came out.
Well, the entire cast is pretty stacked.
But I feel like Oliver Platt, he got bigger after this movie. Not because of this movie, let's not confuse that. But I feel like he got bigger after the movie, but when you invest the money in Patrick Swayze, you would think that this would be something that was all over the place. And I just, up until the point that I saw it in a video store, I never even knew that this film existed.
Which is funny because I was trying to do some behind the scenes research, and I think the theatrical release was pretty big because what I did find was a whole piece that they did on Entertainment Tonight. Like, it was a behind the scenes featurette. They had the interviews with the three big leads. And, you know, Patrick Swayze was such a driving force behind championing this movie.
Right.
It seemed like it was a huge deal at the time. So I just thought it was something that had sort of eluded me.
Did you have any history with this film before we sat to watch it for this?
Never heard of it. Certainly had never seen it. I got nothing.
So I have, I sort of have a really interesting history with this movie. All right. So I said I saw the film on the shelf in the video store when I was a kid, and it piqued my interest enough where, like, used to be able to do this. People of a certain age will tell you this. You could pick up the videotape and turn it over and read the back of the box. And if the plot written on the back sounded like something you were interested in, you would rent it for the weekend.
Like going to the library and picking out a book. These plots were a lot more detailed than your little 2 lines on a Netflix or Disney Plus tile.
And I'll tell you that when I turned it over, I looked at it, I read it, and I put it back on the shelf. Fast forward about 2 months, my 10th birthday party. You know, you have your friends come over. I didn't ask for anything. One of them gifted me this movie on VHS. And I gotta be honest with you, I kind of had to fake the smile because I knew that I wasn't all that interested in the movie because other than, like, Back to the Future 3, I was not a Western guy. That wasn't my thing. Star Wars, superheroes, yes. My dad liked Westerns, but, like, even though he showed them to me, like, it just wasn't anything that, like, I ever really drew myself to. So I got home from the birthday party, and I said, okay. And, like, I knew enough to think, like, his mom and dad went and spent the money. Let me watch it. Maybe I'll really like it. I think I have the exact note here as to when I went, I'm done. I shut the movie off. I was 10, okay?
You were a smart mouth kid, though. We know this.
I donated the VHS to the library.
Oh, my gosh.
I didn't even keep it. That's how much I disliked it when I watched half of it. I shut it off. And I donated the tape to the library.
Are you still friends with this person?
No.
They're not going to listen, are they?
No.
Okay.
I haven't been friends with this person in a long time.
Because of the tape?
Yeah, because of the tape. But with all of that being said, I was curious to sit and revisit this because I think the subject matter, while on one hand simple enough for a child to understand, It's Pecos. It's all of the tall tales, and we're in the West, and it's an adventure. I think the subject matter still is a little heavy for somebody who's 10 years old. And I was sort of hoping that upon a revisit, I would find something here that I hadn't seen before. Maybe I understood the plot a little bit more. Perhaps I appreciated the fact that they went and shot on location. Perhaps, I liked Patrick Swayze as a kid, but he's not with us anymore. So it's like, does he have this great nuanced performance that you don't even know what those words are when you're 10, but you appreciated it now, especially, after his passing? So I was very interested to see if my opinion was going to change upon a revisit here. So, is this the same exact film I saw when I was 10 years old? Or did I walk away going, you know what? I should have kept the VHS tape. That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crewneck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
It is 1905 in the American West, and 12-year-old Daniel Hackett is tired of living on his family farm in Paradise Valley. His father, Jonas, is a dedicated farmer who shares tall tales with Daniel, his favorite being those of Pecos Bill. Jonas refuses to sell his farm to land grabber J.P. Stiles, who later finds Jonas and shoots him in an attempt to kill him and scare the other farmers into selling their property. But not before Jonas gives Daniel the deed to the farm for safekeeping. As his father fights for his life, a grief-stricken Daniel cries himself to sleep on a rowboat that breaks loose and goes down the river. He wakes up in a desert where two crooks look to kill him and steal everything that he has. However, Pecos Bill rides in on a twister with his horse Widowmaker and saves him. While Pecos looks to help Daniel get home, Stiles looks to keep his developers happy by staying on schedule and buying up all of Paradise Valley. He sends word that he is offering up to $1,000 for Daniel, dead or alive, because he knows that he's got the deed. Daniel and Pecos fend off would-be assassins while they try to find Paul Bunyan for added muscle. They find a down-on-his-luck Bunyan, who reluctantly joins them. Along their way to Paradise Valley, they run into John Henry, who joins them on their journey. They come across Calamity Jane, the jilted lover of Pecos Bill, who locks up Bill, Paul, and John while Daniel roams around fending for himself. Stiles and his men close in on Daniel, so the trio, with the help from Babe the Big Blue Ox, break out of jail and rescue him. They head down the river to continue their journey to Paradise Valley. However, they find themselves surrounded by Stiles' men. A frustrated Daniel tells Pecos, Paul, and John that they're just tall tales, and he hands the deed to the farm over. This, however, is all a dream, and Daniel wakes up at home with the deed in hand. So he's kind of wondering, is this real? Was it fake? Though he does believe that this whole thing really did happen. Jonas awakens and Daniel tells him about his adventure, and Jonas tells him that they are selling the land for self-preservation. Daniel decides to stand up to Stiles, and Pecos, Paul, and John arrive to help. Yep, that is literally just how the movie ends. And then, Daniel gets to keep Widowmaker. It is... For a movie, now the runtime on it is, I think it's an hour and 34 minutes. It's a pretty digestible runtime. I'll get this out of the way. I mean, the ending is so abrupt, it's jarring. I feel like they do a lot of setup. I feel like they do more setup than they do action, and I sort of wanted to just throw that out there right away. And I think that's partly why, as a 10-year-old kid, it just bored me to tears.
Wow, that's a bold statement that you were bored, but I do tend to agree. I think my sort of top line note for the whole thing, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, right, because, this is not like my final summation. It's not my final review, but I think that they took a lot of big swings And there were also some big misses here because conceptually, this is brilliant. If you think about it, this is, I mean, it's such a Disney thing to do, to give life to the tall tales
Right.
that we've grown up on. I could see, it would not surprise me if this was something that Walt Disney himself was developing once upon a time, because this to me is pure Walt Disney, the Americana of it all, the things that he was interested in, the trains, the going out west. Like, this has Walt written all over it. And thinking in those terms, this was sort of one of the first live action films, because we have seen Pecos Bill before in Melody Time.
Right.
Which was not the best depiction of what was going on at the time. And, you know, he was not the most stand-up character. So I love the idea that you took all of these larger-than-life personas that we've all grown up on. We've all grown up with these stories, not just through Disney, but just, you know, in school. We've read the books. We've done the fairy tales. So I thought it was so cool that they would bring that to life. Compounded with, you start with these big sweeping vistas. And I was like, are you kidding me with this location shoot? Everything was on location. I was floored. I was like, how do people not talk about this movie more?
The true victory in this film, in my opinion, is the cinematography. It's stunning throughout. If there's one thing the movie does well the entire time, it is the cinematography. It is shooting on location. They are the sets. This is the Disney that I wish we would get back to. Not everything in this movie, but a great deal of this movie I'm glad we've moved away from. But this is where I wish we would go back to. This is what CGI cannot do. This is what green screen cannot do, especially Disney special effects that are horrific all of the time, more times than not. This is what it puts you in a time and a place, and this is the Disney magic.
It truly is. We have not, the only thing that I think is comparable to doing a big budget film like this, where you're actually taking your cast and crew to the location. The most recent one that they've done, I think, is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
But the first one, before it got very, very CGI heavy. I feel like if you did something like this now, and I'm not saying like based on this material, but I feel like if you released a film like this now and you actually put the effort into the production and you gave a good director a budget to do something like this, people would flock to the theaters for something like this. This is what we are starving for now.
Right.
And I just can't believe that I had like never even heard of this film and people are not talking about it just on the locations alone. So as good as that is, it kind of gets not balanced out, but it's kind of knocked down a peg because I feel like the open is a little clunky. Again, conceptually, it's great because I'm thinking, you know, by the time Daniel and his father go out into the boat, that the father's going to start telling the tales and then we're going to sort of see these stories through flashback. Mm-hmm. I like that our main character actually became a part of the story. So I thought that was really well done. But some of this dialogue, the pacing kills me. It is so slow and they leave so much breathing room between the line deliveries. I can hear the riff tracks being inserted as I was watching this. The mother's delivery of everything is so flat. You never know, you know, if she's like making bread or if there's a legit emergency because tonally she delivers everything the same. So
He's a
really,
boy, Jonas.
Yeah, it doesn't like build the stakes from the beginning.
It doesn't.
And there are very, very big stakes here, which is where I think it's one instance where this movie can stand the test of time because thematically, this is still kind of going on right now. It's the man versus machine. It's the technology. It's the, you know, idea of, you know, the government taking things from you. Like all of these things, we're still talking about them. But because it is so life and death, I appreciate that they didn't like over dramatize it, but at the same time, for such big stakes, it wasn't very suspenseful. The one bit of dialogue that I do like is when she says, "Your father's fit to be tied." That's an expression I feel like we don't use enough anymore.
Yeah, I think that there's very good character development that does happen here. You get the 12-year-old, he sees the car, the horseless carriage, right? He's all excited to see it. It's here in Paradise Valley. His father doesn't believe in it because it's the farm. Kid hates the farm. His father offers the peace offering. We're going to go out fishing like we do. And did I tell you that? Yes, you told me this one. Well, did I tell you that? Yeah, you told me that one. So I like that we do get a glimpse into what their day-to-day is. I think it says a lot about those characters right away. We know exactly who they are without having to waste too much time. It's everything that happens after that I have a problem with.
Well, before we get too far ahead, there are a couple more things that I bump on about this open. I feel like you said, we're getting a glimpse of their day to day. This is one day, and it sort of goes a little bit too fast. I mean, to your point, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but when we meet Daniel, when he's, driving the plow with the horse, and then the horse runs away when he sees the car, it's early morning. Like, this kid is up before the sun and at work, which is, what you do when you have a farm. So then he goes back to the house. The dad is taking care of the horse. He's going about his chores. And then he asks Daniel to go chop some wood. I need either a much bigger pile of wood here, or Daniel on a different chore to show that there's passage of time, because then by the time they get into the fishing boat, now the sun is setting. So I'll buy that you've been mad at your son all day and now you want to kind of smooth things over before you settle in for the night. That's fine. But these scenes, they eat through them so fast. This happens in like 3 minutes, and they really don't show the passage of time over the course of the day, which is maybe nitpicky, but this is also where I thought that it was just going to be Jonas telling the stories and we were going to see them through flashbacks. So I do appreciate that it really does subvert your expectations that Daniel is going to end up in them. The other thing that I bump on, I don't know that Jonas is the type of man who would believe tall tales when he's trying to tell Daniel or he's trying to instill in Daniel, this is our way of life and we need to be practical. So it's kind of surprising that he would believe in the tales.
See, I don't agree with that. I think that he knows that he's raising Daniel into this life where he's got to basically be an adult his entire life. So he should give him a little bit of whimsy and a little bit of childhood. The other thing is, if he doesn't, why do we care or like Jonas? Why do we care that he gets shot other than he's a parent? You know what I mean? Like, you've got to give him something, and I think that it works to humanize him a little bit, because otherwise he's completely disconnected from his children.
Well, no, but I think there's a little bit of subtlety where, they do give him, or I should say, he gives Daniel credit, because when he talks about the code that they live by and, the stories that have passed down to him, he says the last piece of it is you should never spit in front of a woman or child. And then they both spit. So you don't regard him as a child anymore. You regard him as a man, even though he's 12. But that's also because, he is your right hand every day. So I kind of like that. Like, it was a subtle thing, but it's like, I think that's why, because they are, and 12 is such a good age because it is a coming of age story for Daniel. Part of him still wants to be a kid. Part of him is fascinated by the cars. So that's where this really works, because Jonas does have to bring him back to reality with, well, no, but does it work? No, because you're feeding him the stories, but it's, no, you need to work. This is the reality. It's kind of disconnected.
So Jonas goes on to this meeting with Stiles. All of the farmers are there, where Stiles is offering them an extreme amount of money for all of their farms, because he's looking to move the train through there, ultimately to develop the land. Jonas arrives at the meeting and speaks up for everybody and says, I'm not selling, and basically alludes to the fact that he was never going to sell. I can understand why he would go to the meeting to turn the offer down, but you showed up with the deed.
Thank you.
Knowing you weren't going to sell. It's just so that he can hand the deed to Daniel and then get shot.
Yeah. This whole thing, you show your whole hand by bringing that deed. And it's also really foolish because, you know, before he leaves, you get that beat of his wife, think of the family, please don't do this. Why are you bringing a gun? You know, this isn't one of the stories that you tell Daniel. You know, she's trying to ground him. But he takes off with the deed and the gun. So what's the plan when they do kill you? Because you don't know that Daniel is there with you to pass this off. So now, if you get killed and they take the deed from your dead body, you have literally left your family with nothing.
What they should have done, this is how it should have played out. Before he left, he should have given Daniel the deed and put him on the rowboat.
Yeah.
And then he goes.
Yeah.
Instead, what you get is, first off, everybody in Paradise Valley knows that Stiles shot Jonas. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
And nobody is trying to arrest this man. The sheriff is not on him. Maybe he's bribing the sheriff. And that's why nobody's coming after him. The fact that it is so well documented that he did this and nobody goes after him, in and of itself is ridiculous.
Especially because they know exactly where to find him because he's like living on the train.
Right. So really what should have happened here, because now Daniel goes back home, Jonas has been shot, he's fighting for his life, he runs to the rowboat, he cries himself to sleep in the rowboat.
In the morning.
In the morning.
This is the next morning.
Which, even as a 10-year-old, I was like, weak. You know, like, because it's so cliche, it's like nauseating how cliche it is. It should have been, he's out on the rowboat, and Jonas says, I'll come and find you. And then he hears the gunshot. You could have even been really cliche and just have him be like, Pa! And not know that his father's alive, become grief-stricken at night, and cry himself to sleep with the deed. That at least would have made more sense than everything else that happened here.
No, you're absolutely right. I can forgive the cliche because it would have built the tension more. I also thought and this is like really nitpicky, but I kind of wish they had one more kid besides the newborn to like really raise the stakes of, you know, now Jonas might not pull through and you've got 3 mouths to feed.
I don't think we needed that, but it certainly would raise the stakes. You know what? Now, Daniel wakes up from this nap. He's in the desert in the rowboat. And you bring in the first two of the insufferable bozos that we're going to see in this movie.
And this scene drags
It's awful.
so much. My immediate thought was Holes, because it totally looks like Holes when they're just like in the flat desert with the rowboat where he finds the peaches. And I was kind of like, oh, I guess just for the nostalgia and for a film that I really like the familiarity was kind of nice. And then they have their speaking lines and I was like, oh my Lord. They are just like the most rootin' tootin' varmints that you can imagine. They are the equivalent of the Hocus Pocus bullies as far as a stereotype of an antagonist.
Yes. All of this so that you can intro Pecos Bill. This is supposed to be your hero of the film. We've been told who he is up to this point. He is this tall tale, but he's so strong and he's so intimidating. Like, Daniel in and of himself alone probably could have taken these two out. So the fact that these are the two that he has to defeat in his first scene of the film do not do that character any service.
No, and really, I mean, Daniel is tiptoeing on borderline unlikable at this point because Pecos Bill gets him out of the jam, and then he introduces himself, and he's, listing his much like Jack Sparrow, the way that he's buying into his own hype. He's getting high off his own supply, and listing all of his accolades. And Daniel interrupts him, and he's like, "What's your name?" or whatever it is that he says, and he's like, "I'm getting there."
And that's the thing. Like, at that point, I wish they would have just turned this into a comedy.
Yes,
because that's the other thing. If you just turn it into a straight comedy, this probably would have been great.
Especially if you did have, wow, I really didn't think I was going to be comparing this to Pirates so much, but I mean, obviously Pirates is on such a pedestal, but there are so many similarities. If you had Pecos being the Jack Sparrow to, Daniel as Will Turner, like being the straight man, where he's going to corrupt him a little bit, like that would have been great.
Or if the Tall Tales were the legend, but he kept tripping and failing upwards. You could have done a lot more with this, but instead they pick times where this is supposed to be serious, and then they pick times where this is utterly ridiculous. For example, I'm fine with him immediately, without question, being like, "Well, we're going west. I got to get you back to Paradise Valley." Okay, you don't need them to argue and bicker back and forth, all for Pecos to end up doing the right thing. That's fine. But he's immediately like, "We need muscle. Let's go get Paul Bunyan." The whole thing seems so forced. Like, I understand these are all tall tales and you're trying to get all of these characters together.
Right.
But it seems like you tried too hard and yet not enough at the same time.
Well, this is where the film also gets really clunky, right? Because Pecos first says that he's going south before he relents to helping Daniel, which I also, by the way, I had to look up where Paradise Valley was.
I assumed it was like California.
It is. It's
okay.
It's NorCal, and they do mention the redwoods too. But I'm thinking the whole time we're in like Death Valley, Nevada, like Lower Nevada, that kind of area. I didn't realize like how far, and because we don't get that because he naps, and the next thing we know, he's in the empty river, and he's in Texas. Yeah. So I didn't realize how far they had to travel, because to your point, when he does finally decide to bring Daniel home, why do you need Paul Bunyan to do that? Part of that is because, and they don't focus in on this enough, there is a wanted sign or a not a warrant, but news has traveled that Daniel has this deed and Styles has it out for him. It's not even subtle. It's too fast. They do send word via Morse code.
Right.
And that's how everybody knows to be on the lookout for Daniel. And that's why in almost every town that they're in, they encounter people that are ganging up on them. I completely missed that the first time around. And I'm like, this is not Styles' gang. So why? Because the other thing that's confusing, and I mean, to the film's credit, they didn't rely on a map to keep showing where they were. As Pecos and Daniel are working their way up from Texas, Styles is coming back down on the train. So they're going to cross paths in the middle. What's unclear is the first time they cut back to Styles' train, which is back at home in Paradise Valley. It's confusing because they're building a railroad. So it's like, where does the train go? It's not really established that it's going to eventually go backwards. But when they cut to it, you really don't know where Styles is or how much time has passed, how long Daniel has been away, because we only get that one scene with the varmints.
Right.
So by the time we get back to Styles, I was like so lost that first time around. I was like, okay, he's still up there. and he's sending word out to try and drag this deed back. But it's like, how did word reach Texas? You can't possibly know that he drifted that far. And he wouldn't have drifted that far. Like, let's say he actually did make it all the way downriver. That would not have happened in a day's time.
Right, and that's where it's like, this is either real or it isn't, you know, and that gets a little muddy. Instead, what we get is more dimwits, more of the, you know, and firing pistols into the air and tripping over each other, all in service of what? Pace-killing danger scenes that are like, when they do it in Austin Powers, it's there for comedy. Here they do it, and it's not for comedy. And it happens multiple times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. These action scenes should be the most memorable parts of this film, but they are probably the clunkiest. Like, this is where, again, to compare it to Pirates, this is where you could get such great physical comedy in these fights, especially because, you know, if you want to go the route of let's not be overly violent and use the guns because it's Disney, then do the gimmicky stuff, like smash more bottles over people's heads and, you know, trigger different things to fall. Like, this should be the equivalent of Jack and Will's first sword fight in Pirates of the Caribbean, which is so great, not just because of the stunt choreography, but because of all the other gimmicky stuff that's happening where they're, you know, balancing on the teeter-totter and one of them flies up to the rafters, or, you know, Jack is cheating and he grabs the poker from the fire, you know, like it should be the equivalent of that. And then when he escapes in the handcuffs and he's got to do the zip line. And you had so much opportunity for that kind of physical comedy here. And I hate saying that. It really grieves me too, because Patrick Swayze did do a lot of his own stunts. And it was something that he was so proud of because he loved the character so much. But it just doesn't translate. And that's not really a critique of him. A lot of it is, I hate to say it, the kid actor. And a lot of it is the editing. This film is really not paced well, but here's where you see it the most. For example, in that scene with the saw where Daniel's leg is caught and he's on the log that is going towards the buzzsaw. He is just sitting there rolling around, and it cuts back to the fight with Pecos Bill, and then it cuts back to him. Like, I'm sorry, but that kid should have been sliced in half 3 times over, because the edit just drags it out. But like, that should actually be happening so quickly. And you just see him like fake struggling and rolling around and grunting and being completely helpless to save himself. But the edit drags on so much. We know that Pecos is going to come and save him, but it just takes forever to happen. And actually, I think in that scene, it's actually the old man who helps him out. Like, Pecos takes out all the bad guys, but the old gentleman is the one who unhooks him. And then he makes a comment about, like, again, Daniel's unlikable. Like, we've just seen you in this very, you know, vulnerable position where your life is being threatened. And it's like, I kind of don't care that you made it out, because he's like, well, what does that guy know? And Pecos does shoot him down. He's like, more than you. Which is, you know, part of Daniel's whole character, is he thinks he knows everything and he's got so much to learn, much like every 12-year-old. So now we finally wrangle Paul Bunyan. I love this Jumanji Paul Bunyan. I love that he's not the, you know, lumberjack looking plaid vest, the overall, you know, the image that we've always seen. I love that he's a little lost and he's wanted to be a hermit and remove himself from society. And he's got this, you know, living off the land air about him. I love what they did here.
I love Oliver Platt. This is the worst Paul Bunyan I've ever seen. Aesthetically, he's fine. His home looks like something out of Lord of the Rings, but if he is living off the land and he wants to live in a hollowed out tree, all right, so be it. I can understand where he sits there and goes, well, we don't steal from the land, we just borrowed from it. Paul Bunyan was a logger. He cut down forests,
that's
okay?
True. That's true.
They do not know what this character is, because there was a review that back in the 90s that called him a tree hugger. And they said that was a big problem because they don't understand the source material. So this is where it's like, are we a parody, or are we trying to put the Tall Tales to life? And it almost seems like there were two different scripts written, and they just took the parts they liked out of both of them and put together a movie out of it. I love Oliver Platt. If this is trying to be a parody, he's phenomenal. And I know I'm jumping here, and I've basically just given you my character and my cast analysis of this particular. He's a terrible Paul Bunyan. The character is awful.
I can see where you're saying that, because there's also a little bit of a drunk quality that they've given him. But where I think that does work is that this becomes a buddy movie between Paul Bunyan and Pecos Bill, because it's clearly established that there is a long history here. There's a camaraderie. They've been through some stuff together, which, they're obviously going to double down on by the time they get John Henry and bring him into the fold. But to me, another Pirates comparison, like, this is the history of Jack and Gibbs, where they've always had each other's back no matter what situation that they've been in. So I like that quality about it. And it's like, okay, we have Paul on board, like, everything's going to be good now. So while this is going on, they're cutting back and forth to Styles on the train. We didn't talk about this before. I love this train set.
It's so good.
I could not love it more. This is what Disney does best, besides shooting on location. That futuristic, the past but the future combination with this steampunk look, they nailed it 1,000 times over in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's what make movies like 180 Days Around the World successful. Tomorrowland, I know not the most popular film, but I love that movie. When they do this futuristic thing and they're able to make it meld with a movie that takes place in, like, just 1,000 points for this. They just nail it. It's so good. So then we bring John Henry into the fold. I love this entire scene. Setting, absolutely gorgeous. I love that they establish that there is also a friendship between Pecos, Paul, and John Henry. The only thing that I really bump on is that Daniel cost him everything, his entire reputation. And then Daniel apologizes to Pecos, not John, for what happened. And I think that you left a lot on the table there as far as what needs to be unpacked and what this defeat means for John Henry's reputation, for a person of color who we are going to learn was a slave, and his he comes from,
his father, he said, had been sold upriver. Yeah,
exactly. They do not, they barely touch on it. They don't unpack any of that enough. And like, we needed more POV from John Henry and what this all means to him. Because then we get the next scene and it's like, all right, what are we going to do about it? We're going to go drink. I appreciate that there's a saloon scene. You need it in a movie like this. I love that we get Calamity Jane, and I don't need to tell you how much I love the casting, but I wish she went bigger. I feel like this was such a, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about the characters, but this was such a subdued performance for Catherine O'Hara, and I don't know if that was her or if it was direction. What I really wanted, she comes in quite literally guns blazing, and you know that she is, you said it best before, the jilted lover, and she's pissed off at Pecos because they too have a history. But I will never forget, and part of this is because I remember from watching our home videos back, when one of our first times on the Great Movie Ride, we got the Western instead of the gangster scene.
Yeah.
And we came off the ride, and my mom was like, oh my God, all she did was yell, because our cast member was like really energetic and she went really big with the performance. And I remember my mom not liking it, but I remember her because I would go back and watch the video so often. And like, that's what I wanted from this. I wanted Calamity Jane, like just yelling all of her lines. Like it didn't have to be a nuanced performance. It could have just been that she comes in and her voice is as loud as her personality. And I would have been fine with that. Also, huge miss here again for the gimmicky shots.
Yeah, I mean, you get a few of them, but I think that you have to toe the line because what you're describing from Great Movie Ride is an outlaw that's there to steal from you. Calamity Jane is a law enforcement official. So how off the rails can she be? She's not just another cowboy that's rootin', tootin', shootin'. I mean, she is, but she's still, you know, I think that you need to calm her down a little bit more.
I mean, I get that, but also because she is the jilted lover, like let her go a little crazy. But the other thing, I mean, you do get a couple of the gimmicky shots, but like I what I would have loved to see was a scene where like the shooting arcades that, you know, you would do on like the boardwalk or like that they had where a shot fired triggers something else. So like it would have been so much fun to see that like brought to life with, you know, the pianist, something happens to the piano and, you know, he's missing a few keys. So now he's like playing the score of the whole scene, but there's like a wonky note here and there, or like something comes crashing from the rafters, or just something more. And instead we see all of these shots being fired, but especially when she gets to Pecos and she outlines him in bullet holes.
Yeah.
You hear the gunfire like 3 times and then it's like 1, 2, 3, and then you see the bullet holes. Like, again, really bad editing.
So she throws them in jail. Styles' men and Styles are closing in on, you know, on all of them. Babe the Big Blue Ox finally plays a part in this other than being there and breaks Pecos John and Paul out of the jail in a scene that makes no sense, where Pecos is yelling at Babe and Babe decides it doesn't want, you know, Babe is not going to pull the wall down and help them unless Pecos apologizes to him.
Because Babe is sensitive.
Yeah. Again, we're either a Western or we're a parody. Pick one and stick to it. It makes sense.
And we've also sort of seen this with Widowmaker before because she doesn't take to Daniel right away. And Pecos tells him to back off of her.
But they finally get broken out. And now Pecos Bill has his chance to just take out Styles and end this entire thing. And he doesn't.
Instead, we get this ridiculous, what is it, a water tower?
Yeah.
That scene where Daniel, you know, he's trying to escape. So naturally, you run to the place where there's nowhere to exit or nowhere to hide.
From the highest point in town.
Where everyone can see you, and Styles follows him up there. And Styles could have very easily had him 10 times over.
Yes, but Paul Bunyan ends up being the cushion for Daniel.
Especially because Style, you know, it's a tower. They should be like equidistant from each other the entire time, where if Styles is going around one way, Daniel should be working his way back to the ladder. Styles comes around the long way to Daniel. Daniel had every means of escaping.
And didn't take it.
The one thing I will say, that ladder, you see where it's attached to the base. So they covered their tracks as far as why didn't you just kick it over?
Right.
I was like, okay, all right, I'll give you that one. But that scene, it's terrible, but they escape on a riverboat, and this is where it like more than makes up for it because it's absolutely gorgeous.
That, and you do get the best scene in the movie.
Ugh.
Between John Henry and Daniel. When John Henry talks about, yeah, my father was hard on me too, but then explains that he had been a slave. He was sold down the river. And you get that glimpse of him. And it's a great performance all around.
Oh, my God.
And the chemistry between the two of them is outstanding. It's one of the few times where Daniel, I hate to say it, not only as a character, but also as the actor, Like, this is where you get a phenomenal performance. It's one of the few times you get a really good performance.
Just up against that stunning backdrop too, but I feel like they needed to let this breathe a little bit more. Aside from the fact that it's beautiful and I want to spend more time in this setting, it's a great parallel in their stories of, you know, I lost the chance to make it right with my father. You still have that chance. John Henry's instilling that on Daniel is, you know, do this while you have the chance and don't make my same mistakes. But again, they don't let John Henry's point of view breathe enough, because the plight of you being taken away from your father because you were slaves and he was sold is not the same thing. Even though Jonas was shot, which is terrible, that was entirely his own fault. And he could have totally avoided that entire situation had he had a cooler head. Not the same thing as slavery. So they should have really made more of a distinction, even though it is a really nice scene to have them relate to each other like that.
Then you get the moment that I shut the film off and never finished it.
Oh, gosh.
This horrific, idiotic, borderline desert fight between John, Paul, and Pecos. It makes no sense. It comes out of nowhere. And they all come off like they're children. I guess you wanted to play it for laughs for 5-year-olds, but it didn't work with the 10-year-olds. This was the exact moment, because I went, oh, and I went, oh, yeah, that was my reaction then. So it's from this point on that I saw the movie for the first time. Yeah, it's really, really bad.
I mean, I get why you do it, right? Because you have these larger than life characters, each with their own set of skills. You put them all in the movie. We are still doing this today with Deadpool and Wolverine. You want to see the clash of the Titans, right? Star Wars, they do it all the time. You need a classic lightsaber fight between your biggest characters. So I totally get that. But you're right. This is just a little ridiculous, especially because it's coming off of the campfire scene the night before where Daniel's telling them about the invention of electricity and light bulbs. And he's saying how great it's going to be when you can see everything at night. And the three of them, their immediate gut reaction is, well, what about the stars? How do you see the stars? And Daniel's like, well, you don't anymore. So it's that amazing, like, generational divide, which is the same argument that Daniel's having with his father of he's pro-technology and Jonas is a lot more conservative. So that scene is brilliant. And yeah, to water it down by following it up with this ridiculous fight, it just makes no sense. Like this is exactly what I was talking about, where this movie swings so big and there are so many things that it does right, and then there are so many things that it does wrong. And then it gets really anticlimactic because Styles eventually catches up to them and he gets the deed, and that's what ultimately ends this dream sequence. So I mean, I get it. Like, that's what happens when you're having a nightmare, is like your body will wake you up. But I feel like this was just such an odd place to leave it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really learned a lesson here. I don't think that it's not one of these things where Daniel woke up from the dream having argued with the three of them because he was being stubborn and now regrets it and is trying to get back to them. It just sort of ends, and Jonas is alive, and now I'm going to go stop Styles on my own, and I'm going to stand in front of a train, and it's going to run me over, and it's not going to kill me, and now everybody comes back. That is literally just how this movie ends. I'm not spoiling anything. It's all so poorly paced, just because everything just sort of happens.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate it did subvert my expectations one more time in that Jonas caved. Because you're thinking now that they're out of this dream sequence, or at least I was thinking, they're out of this dream sequence. Daniel is going back with the tools that he needs and the mentality that he needs to help his father stand up against Styles. So you kind of think that that's where it's going to go, and they're going to have one last stand against Styles, but now Daniel is going to be this force to be reckoned with. So I was a little bit taken by surprise that Jonah had folded and he was ready to just give in. Being that it ends up as Daniel on his own deciding to take down Goliath, I kind of wish we had never gotten the beat where he wakes up and Daniel was just like, all right, I'm going back. This is what I needed to do. And the three of them help him take down Styles. And then we're out of the dream sequence, but everything that they fought for has come true. Instead of this weird, go back home, dad's alive, but he's lost his, not his will to live, but his will to fight up against Styles. And now Daniel is fighting Styles of his own volition. So you've had the character arc for Daniel, but it sort of feels unearned. And then as far as the train running him over, I mean, all right, you got a good Disney villain in that Styles is not afraid to run a train over a child. But it's, again, with this terrible editing and this terrible pacing, you see Daniel rolling around underneath the train. And I mean, that's the whole bit, right? Is that he's small enough to fit under there where it's not actually running him over. But the fake struggling is just terrible. It looks terrible, and they did nothing to cut around it. Another thing that they could have done, which ultimately happens, is that Paul cuts all of the support beams and the tunnels caving in on itself. If we were going to wake up from the dream and bring this all into reality, that's what Daniel just should have done. And done something physical, and maybe he doesn't have the strength to do it by himself, but that's the lesson learned, is that I have the inner strength now because of what I learned from Paul and John Henry in this situation, and I can collapse this thing on my own and take it down. That would have made it seem more real, instead of bringing the three of them back to each play to their strengths to bring down Styles. You needed a clearer line of the dream sequence and reality. They should not have met.
I do like the fact that Jonas sees all three of these characters at the end of the film.
I do too.
It just seemed like a poetic ending.
Yeah, like I like that he kind of got to meet his heroes, even though, he doesn't really interact with them. But I sort of wish that he questioned what he saw, kind of like a test of his own faith at this point. I feel like that could have been a little bit stronger. But again, stunning. Except for the CGI tornado that Pecos rides away on. But again, 1995.
I'm willing to forgive it for being...
I can forgive it for 1995. It looked better than a lot that's out now, but the rest of it's stunning.
Yeah. Well, Disney as a company had an affinity for Westerns. Obviously, we know that. They weren't afraid to tackle a lot of the stories of lore over the course of their history. So it would lead you to believe that perhaps there are some Easter eggs that are buried somewhere in the film. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek-and-find card game that you can play in your favorite parks, whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, or more. Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. So I have... This is cameo related. I have one that I couldn't prove or disprove, so I'm proving it.
Okay.
And then I have another one that I was able to prove. I think Oliver Platt plays a dual role in this film.
Huh.
The developers on the train, we know one of them is William H. Macy, who went uncredited. There's a gentleman sitting across from William H. Macy. I don't think he has any speaking lines. But in both viewings of this film, I'm looking at him. I'm almost certain it's Oliver Platt.
I did not even catch that. Wow.
But let's talk about the old man. The old man that you talked about that helped Daniel in the buzzsaw. I'm looking at him, and I go, I know this guy. He's familiar. I know who it is. And it was a couple of cracks in his voice that sort of triggered it for me. And then I went and researched it. The old man is uncredited in the film. Is Burgess Meredith, who played the Penguin in the Adam West Batman series.
Wow.
That's Burgess Meredith. 3 year. The film was released in 95. It was shot in 93. So it was shot 4 years before he died in 1997. So 2 years before he died, the film's released, but it was 4 years prior was when they shot the film.
I was wondering why he had so many speaking lines. For like, he's a pivotal character in that scene, but not for the overall movie. And I'm like, why are we spending so much time with him? But like, I would have never picked up on that, obviously. But leave it to you to find the Batman in all of it. Mine is a little bit of behind the scenes information. We talked about how CGI was in its very rudimentary stages here. So a lot of this was done practically. So how do you get a big blue ox without computers? They used vegetable dye. So it didn't harm the animal. But I thought
it looked good.
I mean, it looks great. Practical effects are always going to look better, but like the way that it really showed up, it was very vibrant. It's not like, oh, did they try to make it blue? Like, no, it's a blue ox and it looks great.
Let's talk about our cast here, starting with Nick Stahl, who plays Daniel Hackett. I mean, look, we've historically said that we don't like going after a child actor for their performance. And I do think that this film in all is poorly written. I think a lot of this falls victim to some poor direction, definitely to some poor editing. But there's just something about this character that's not working. And I think that it transcends those problems.
Yeah, I mean, the writing, the editing are really not great. But I don't know if it's the acting or the direction. I mean, this kid could have hit every mark and did everything that he was told to do. So it may not be his fault, but something, I agree with you, it just feels off. And I feel like a lot of other actors at the time had the chops to do a lot more with this role. Like, I'm sure that JTT was absolutely in consideration for this, but he would have been doing Lion King and then Man of the House. So he's obviously all tied up. Call me biased, but I feel like either Ben Savage or who I would have really loved to see in it, I think Ryder would have slayed this role. I think either of them could have been awesome in this.
Patrick Swayze plays Pecos Bill, and he's really good. I think he looked the part. I think he played the part well. I think this movie needed to pick a lane and stick to it. Is he a serious cowboy, or is he a parody of a cowboy? They don't know what it is. This leads me to kind of, in this case, I'm feeling this is more direction and writing than the talent, because we know Patrick Swayze's great. And when he plays it really well, he's outstanding, but this movie is so inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, I love Patrick Swayze, and I feel like he did the best that he could with what he had to work with. I think what's great about the character is how much he loves the character. I feel like it could have been a lot stronger, especially because, you know, to your point about not knowing which lane it's in, I think if we had to really pinpoint it, it's leaning more towards drama. And I think he tried to give it a gravitas that is uncalled for here. Had he done Jack Sparrow years before Pirate, like that would have been the sweet spot if he figured that out in this character. But for what it is, you know, and I think the stunt work is pretty great. I love that he wanted to do most of his own, but I feel like this actually could have been a career performance, like the performance of his lifetime, if he was not weighed down by the writing and direction.
Scott Glenn plays J.P. Styles. I liked this villain. I thought his aesthetic was great. I thought the train was great. I thought his motivation was great. And this guy just didn't care. He was going to do whatever he had to do to get what he wanted. Like, yeah, finally, like we got a really good villain in this movie.
He reminds me of Lucius Malfoy in all the right ways. And to your point, love the aesthetic. We haven't set costumes, top tier.
Yeah, they're excellent.
Incredible.
You've got Oliver Platt as Paul Bunyan. I said what I said.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I absolutely loved him. I mean, I love Oliver Platt, but like, I loved him in this role. I loved what he did with the character. I love the slightly drunken quality that he gave him. I'm used to Oliver Platt in those more serious stoic roles, like in Chef, where he's the restaurant critic. And I love that movie, and I love him in that too. But like, I feel like it was fun seeing the guard down a little bit and having him let loose like this. Actually, I dare say that Paul Bunyan was my favorite thing about this movie.
His performance was not, in fact, molten. I think the best character in this movie is John Henry, played by Roger Aaron Brown.
Yeah.
Everything he did was perfect. He played this role exceptionally well.
He really did. Like, so much. And this is where what you didn't get enough of from the rest of the characters. So much is happening in his eyes. Like, in those close-ups. And there is just so much of a still waters run deep quality about him. And that's where, again, it's like you needed to draw the, this is where this movie would have been knocked out of the park. If Paul and Pecos were the chuckleheads, but he's what grounded them because he is so stoic and he's got such an amazing presence. And he was the driving force between, you know, or behind, we got to get this kid home and make this right. And they can't steal the land. That would have been such a great dynamic. But I mean, on his own, he's a standout. He's incredible. He's a scene stealer. He really is.
Stephen Lang plays Jonas Hackett. I thought he was really good in this. I do like the qualities that he possesses where he is trying to make a man out of his son, but at the same time, he does want him to still live, you know, with that childish whimsy. A lot of people would later get to know him as the villain in Avatar. So a very different kind of performance for him. Yeah. But I thought he was quite good in this.
I would agree. I think he did a lot with very little screen time.
Yes, I would agree. And then we'll mention Catherine O'Hara as Calamity Jane.
More. I needed more. I thought she was going to join up with them and finish the journey, and I was disappointed when she didn't.
Final thoughts on Tall Tale. I'm going to make this quick and easy. This is the same movie I watched when I was 10 years old. I'm never going to watch this again. The fact of the matter is, I feel like they didn't know what this movie was. I think they had too many ideas of what the movie was supposed to be, and they couldn't nail one down, so they just took all the stuff that they liked, because you can't even call this movie a product of its time. This isn't 90s zany, because it never fully commits to that. It doesn't fully commit to being an adventure. It doesn't fully commit to being a drama. It doesn't fully commit to being a parody or a comedy. It doesn't fully commit to being anything. That's the biggest problem with this movie. It was a box office failure. I think a big reason for that was because These are American tall tales. People in India don't care about this. People in China don't care about this. People in Japan don't care about this. People in Russia, especially in 1995, really didn't care about this. I think that this had such a niche market that you lose the international audience, which, let's call it what it is. That's where Disney makes so much of their box office money. It's globally. This didn't have global appeal. I give them credit for knowing that going in and still making the movie. I think that there's something admirable about that. But at the end of the day, while beautifully shot and while the sets and the costumes are phenomenal, it was a lousy movie 30 years ago. And I don't say this very often. It's still lousy. It's just not a good movie.
Which is a shame because all of the ingredients are right there to make this one of the best Disney films of all time. It should be.
It should be revered.
This should be, yeah, exactly. Like, we should be doing some D23 type of celebration for this film right now, along with Goofy Movie, you know? Like, it's just, cinematography-wise, it is one of the best things that Disney has ever put to film. I would say this, Pirates of the Caribbean, are like your top tier as far as just something that utilizes the setting, a gorgeous setting in all of the right ways. It is absolutely stunning. So my suggestion would be, if you've never seen it, watch for that, and just for the pure nostalgia factor of a time where films were shot on location. Because for all of that, it's the best part about the film. But the fact that you have huge talent of the era that was completely squandered, that all goes back to the writing and the direction. And the director, Jeremiah Chechik, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He also did Benny and June and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, one of your favorites. So, like, we know that he can tell a good story on film. We know that he can handle comedy. So it's really surprising that didn't translate over here. But yeah, it kind of breaks my heart, because this is conceptually Disney at its finest. To do a movie about the Tall Tales, you know, it feels, the parts that are good feel like pirates. They feel like holes weaving all of these different characters together. Like, it's all there. It's just one of these really disappointing films where, you know, you had all of the right ingredients, you just didn't bake the cake long enough.
We are interested in knowing what you have to say about Tall Tale. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first, a quick break.
News of the week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories on land and at sea. KMV Travel specializes in Disney destinations, family theme parks, and most major cruise lines, providing unmatched service from start to finish with the belief that vacations are an important part of life. KMV Travel will help you and your family experience new places, learn about other cultures, relax, and reconnect with those who mean most. KMV Travel will guide you from booking to bon voyage, ensuring you have the tools you need to enjoy each moment of your vacation at no extra cost to you. Visit kmvtravel.com to connect with an expert travel advisor and start planning your getaway now.
We got the trailer drop for Tron Ares this week. I have to say, when we learned that we were leaving the grid, I was not entirely in favor of it. And I understand, how do you make a third movie where you're going back into the grid? I understand the timeliness of AI, what it's doing to our society. Then I saw the trailer, and I went, my God, I can't wait. I'm all in. Let's go.
I mean, that's the thing, right? We love this franchise so much. You and I don't do this often, but like, there are some things that we can just have tunnel vision about. And it's like, no matter what you do, we're going to eat it. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy is one of that. Like, you could do anything and we're going to be like, yep, fine, we're on board. I thought the same thing. I didn't like that we were being out of the grid, you know, because that worked so well for Jurassic Park 3 when they took it off the island. Are we sure though that it's 100% out? Like,
It's out.
the way that they cut this trailer, it could very well be that this is the intro to the movie and then they go back in. So I really didn't love that, especially now because you have the motorcycles and you're putting them in the real world. It kind of reminded me of Batman, like the Dark Knight and his Batmobile when it was a motorcycle. So like for that much, I was kind of like, I don't know. But by the time I finished watching it, I was like, yep. Can't wait for this movie.
And I just wonder, like, if they can change the lighting on the attraction to do a cross promotion where they light it red.
Oh,
would
that'd
look
be
amazing.
so sick. That would be so sick. I'm sure they could on the dome, but if they're able to pull that off with the cycles.
I don't know that they can. The dome, yes. I don't know that they could with the cycles. Admittedly, I don't remember if those are fixed lights or not, or if it's just an LED that you can control. I've only been on the attraction once.
Well,
We're going to have to go back. Now it's for research purposes. We have to go to Magic Kingdom.
it is a pretty great trailer, though.
Let's talk about Walt Disney World for a second. It was also announced this week that a previous service that was very popular is now being tested again at Walt Disney World. I'm not saying that it's coming back because it is slightly different than it used to be, but it is in its test phases.
I almost fell out of my seat when this news dropped. We are, of course, talking about luggage services at the airport, where, it was a feature that everybody loved about the Magical Express, that the fans have been pounding the table for, and Disney is listening. I think this is also very strategic timing with the opening of Epic Universe happening, at the time of this recording, just 2 short months from now, under 2 months. We are officially under 2 months. We are in media previews, but Disney is testing with Southwest baggage pickup again.
Yes, and while we're on that, I'll get to the baggage pickup in a minute, but while we're on the Epic Universe topic, our very good friends Brendan and Catherine over at Detour to Neverland, surprise dropped an episode today. They were able to attend a media day at Epic Universe, and they have their initial thoughts. I think we'll go ahead and tag that in the show notes. I'm not surprised because Disney has to do something to counteract Epic Universe. All of the things that they are talking about doing to Walt Disney World in terms of the infrastructure and adding to the parks and adding new lands, let's call it what it is. It's Disney, folks. These are 5 years away. They need something for right now. And I think that this is something that is a big help. But it is very much in its test phases, and I'll explain why.
I just appreciate, though, that instead of announcing another sequel or another live action remake that clearly are not very popular with the fans right now, they're listening to what the fans actually want.
So Magical Express is not coming back as of right now. So let's just put that out there. You will still need to pick up your bags at MCO. And remember, to your point, you just said this. To avoid any confusion, this is only if you are flying Southwest Airlines, because they are the official airline of Walt Disney World. If you're flying into MCO, you must retrieve your bags. I'm going to say it again. You must retrieve your bags upon arrival in Orlando. This is not exactly as it was. However, what they are doing now at the value resorts, so at the All-Stars, at Pop Century, and at Art of Animation, there is now a baggage, it's called Airport Luggage Transfer. That's what it's now called. It used to be known as Resort Airline Check-in, so now it's Airport Luggage Transfer. You can drop your bag off there. Your bags will then be taken to the airport. There is a bit of a caveat, though, so you have to plan accordingly. If you are flying out before 1 p.m., so before 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, your bags must be dropped off by 1 a.m. at the luggage transfer.
Okay.
It used to be that you would bring your bags to Magical Express. They would take them, you would get on the bus, and off you would go. I guess because this is still in its test period and because it is a new staff and it is a new system, they are giving themselves a 12-hour grace period. If you are flying at or after 1 p.m., you have to drop the bags off at least 4 hours before your departure time. So that's how this is a little bit different. If you're flying out, because we would always take an early morning flight, I feel like most people do. So if you're that 6:30 in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, you've got to drop your bags off prior to 1 a.m. So be prepared for that, because you're going to have to put dirty clothes in a carry-on if you don't, because you're going to need that change of clothing the next morning when you wake up to go to the airport. So whatever you're wearing or whatever you're sleeping in is going to have to go in your carry-on, because you won't be able to use or access your luggage at that point.
Where I think this is going to be really successful is for those that are not flying out early. And I think this is also very telling of doing it at the value resorts. I think this is going to be great for people who want to spend the extra day and take that late night flight, the last one that you can get. Because then you can drop your bag, not have to worry about it, get extra time in the park, extra time even at Disney Springs, and then just leave from there to go to the airport instead of having to report back to a hotel.
Yeah, that's true, because it's not like you're taking Magical Express.
Exactly. So that's where you could just get an Uber from Springs or a cab and then just leave from there, not have to worry about your bag. So I think that's actually a really nice feature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.